All right, guys. Starting to work on the yard ladder today, just because I wanted to start over here to see how many side tracks or yard tracks I was going to have. And it looks like I'm going to get five. Um, so another thing about transferring the plan to the actual layout, you can see where I've got these parallel lines up here. You know, theoretically, that was going to be the center line for each yard track, but it's going to lay out a little bit differently. So what I've done here is I have soldered these turnouts together, and so I can, kind of lay in the yard here. Uh, so this is just, kind of like one big continuous piece of track right here. I have a marking on the table right here where this first turnout is should be placed. And then just by, connecting these and soldering them together, I'm actually going to end up with a little bit more space between the edge of this yard track and the table than what I thought. I thought the center line was going to be here, but it's actually about, I don't know, an inch maybe further in. So that's good. That's good actually. So what I'm going to do as far as how I'm going to wire this up, obviously I said I've soldered these together, so this is all going to be live down through here. What I'm going to do for each yard track is I'm going to put an insulated rail joiner on one of the rails here, and then have switches mounted on the fascia out here, on-off switches, so I can just turn on and off the individual yard tracks as needed. I doubt that there's ever going to be a whole bunch of locomotives up in this area, but I'm still going to go ahead and prepare the yard tracks so I can cut them off, just in case. So that will be down the roadways, when I get started for wiring, but I have a bunch of single pole, single throw on-off switches that I'm going to mount in the fascia here to control the yard tracks. So the next thing I'm going to do here is probably just draw an outline of where these go, so that when I get ready to glue them, I'll be able to see where they should be placed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and just go ahead and mark where the turnouts are sitting. I think they're in a pretty good spot right here. I may need to do a bit of adjusting, not much, just to kind of get everything to lay out correctly. But I think that's going to be pretty good. What I did have to do on these turnouts, and because I have them connected, one right after the other, the first few ties on this rail here for each turnout, I had to snip off, along with the ties where the switch, oh heck, can't remember the name of the just the switch machine that the manual throw would go. So I'm going to place those obviously on this side of the turnout here, and I'll use a little piece of cardboard or something to mount those here, so they're level with the ties. But other than that, I think that is about all for this little segment of video. So I'm going to get about marking where these go, and then maybe get these glued down. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've got, as you can see, 3 of the yard tracks are in. The one on the right is the yard lead, and then the next 2 are, I'm going to call them track 1 and 2 in the yard. There's about 3/16 of an inch between those box cars there, so there is clearance, I think, enough to allow cars to pass in the yard. So I think we should be good with that. I'm using this clear glue. You can see it. It's called Jot clear glue, and I'm going to see how this works. I do have some white glue as well, so just depending upon which one works better. But I'm going to go with this first, and then continue to glue down some yard tracks, and we'll come back shortly. Okay guys, spent the last little bit here working on the yard, and as you can see, I've got the soldering station fired up there and been soldering some of the joints. Apologize for the background noise. The neighborhood lawn mowing is taking place. But I have the yard pretty well laid in. The track on the right with the curve here is the yard lead, so that's going to be moving on across the lift out. As far as the tracks go, I was able to get 5 yard tracks in there. You can see them from left to right. And also there's a track that's way down at the far end. It's not in place yet, it's just sitting in there. But that goes back to the engine facility, and then the turnout, which is back there as well. We'll have a section of track it's basically going to be a storage track for cabooses, maybe a few locomotives, that kind of thing. But I don't know if you can hear me over the mowing here, but I may cut this off short and come back later after this is all done. But anyway, just wanted to give you an update. I'm continuing to work on the yard, trying to get that finished, and we'll come back when I'm able to talk over these mowers. All right, so as I was saying, now that the mowing is done, I've got most of the yard tracks in here. You can see the 2, I'll call them storage tracks, shooting down there towards the end past the soldering station. The one to the right is not glued down yet, it's just sitting in there. The one to the left is glued, just waiting for it to dry. So just a kind of a side note about soldering stations. You can see that one I have sitting there. It's a Harbor Freight soldering station. I don't know if Harbor Freight is everywhere, but I know in the east and southeast, Harbor Freight is, it's just about everywhere. But anyway, it's a Schaefer soldering station, and it has selectable temperatures on it. And it is one of the best soldering stations well, it's the only soldering station I've ever had, best soldering irons I've ever had. I use it somewhere between 700 and 800 degrees, and it's almost an instantaneous liquefaction of the solder, and it makes for a really nice joint. So one just other side note number 2 about soldering. On the other layouts, which were not in climate controlled rooms, I didn't solder any of the joints. I just let the glue hold the track in place. And because with the temperature swings that I had, I was afraid of the track buckling. But here inside, it's climate controlled, it's humidity controlled. So I'm going to go ahead and solder all the joints to get good contact. The other thing too, just talking about joints, in the yard here, each one of the yard tracks is going to be electrically isolated. I have one rail that has a plastic rail joiner on it, and I will have out here on the fascia on-off switches for each line. The yard lead I'm going to isolate as well completely. I'll have 2 plastic rail joiners on the yard lead where it connects back into the main line. So it'll be completely isolated. I'll be able to, in effect, turn off the entire yard with one switch. But the reason I wanted to put a switch for each yard track is that I could, obviously independently control those. So what else? I have down here, let's see if I can turn the camera around and angle it so you can see. The curve section there is the yard lead, and it's going to come across onto the lift out section. So I think that's the next piece that I'm going to tackle, is seeing how I'm going to get this thing to adhere, the track to adhere to the plywood top on the lift out. Obviously I can use the same glue. I'm using that clear glue that I mentioned earlier. And obviously it'll adhere to plywood, but just trying to keep it stable while it dries, you know, may be a challenge. But anyway, we'll get to that shortly here. One thing that as far as laying, making joints on curves is what I'm trying to say. There's a technique where, you know, everybody has their own process, you know, for joints on curves to kind of keep the track from kinking. You know, I've seen guys solder 2 or 3 sections of track together on a straight, you know, and then curve it to fit so they have one huge piece of flex track. In essence, I've seen other guys, you know, just kind of solder in place. You know, they put a piece of track down, cut the rails even, solder in place, bend the track, and so forth. What I'm going to do here on the rail that slides, I don't know if you can see it here. It's the furthest rail away from us. It's back about 1/2 inch, I guess, from the edge of the ties. What I'm going to do is cut that rail back a little bit further, and with the next piece of track, I'm actually going to slide the rail from the next piece of track into the ties that are on that piece of track that's attached to the table. So in essence, what what you're doing is you're, you know, staggering the joints, if you will. So the joint on the inside rail will be, you know, wherever the track ends, and on the far side, you know, again, I'll cut it back and I'll slide the next rail in there on a straight connection, if you will. Solder that, and then bend the track around to match the radius on the lift out. So that's what I'm going to do next, and I will be back shortly. All right, so here's the theory on this. I don't know how well you can see it. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Back up just a hair. All right, so what I did is I cut that rail back on the outside here. I don't know if you can see it, but the joint is right in there. So this is the joint for the non-movable side of the rail. It's up here, so it's probably, you know, a good 2.5, maybe 3 inches. So what I'm going to do now, before I curve the rest of this, let me back out. Before I curve the rest of this here to match my radius line, I'm going to solder those 2 joints back there so that the track can't move. And then as I bend it around, you know, it's obviously going to shorten that movable rail side another couple of inches, but then I'll account for that when I come back over here and put in the next piece of track. So I'm going to go ahead and move the camera out of the way and solder this, and then show the end result. All right, so track is soldered and glued in place. You can see the solder joints there, I think. Let me see if I can zoom in on them. Where that pin is on the right side, that's the inside rail solder joint, and then right back here where the other pins are is the outside rail solder joint. And let me come back, zoom out again. So coming across the lift out, obviously I have the glue down, but I can't use pins to hold it. So I've got my my weights on there, as you can see. So just a couple of side notes, things that I think I'm apparently in the side mode today. But anyway, just regarding the bench work and the tabletop and so forth. One advantage to using foam board, obviously, not necessarily this garage door insulation foam, but any kind of foam board, is that you can use these T-pins, which I will show you here if it'll focus in. These little T-pins right here, they're about 2 inches long. And with those T-heads on there, they hold the track in place really well. Obviously with the cork on there and the foam below, you can go the whole way down and make sure that the T's are either resting to hold the rail down or hold the ties down, however you want to do that. So these things work really well. They also keep the track from shifting left to right as it's being glued. shortcomings of using this garage insulation foam is that the foam is a little bit more flexible than I would have liked, so it does sag between the joints. What I'm going to have to do, I think, and I won't know this really until I get some trains running, is I may have to run some supports underneath where the rails are, or the tracks are, to keep everything, as level as possible, to kind of take the sag out of the roadbed, if you will. So I guess if I had this to do over again, what I would do is, if you're still trying to economize, is and similar to what I did on the other layout, is I put down masonite first right on top of the bench work. And then on top of the masonite, I use the 1-inch rigid foam insulation. You could probably, on this kind of open network bench work, you could probably get away with just the 1-inch foam rigid insulation. I don't think it would sag much. It's a lot stiffer than this. But, just to be safe, if you're trying to go lightweight and you're trying to go inexpensive, 1/8 inch masonite and then some type of foam on top of that should be just fine. So, other than that, but yeah, it's got shortcomings, but I think I'm able to overcome them. Once I get to the point of putting those supports in under the track, I'll obviously record that and let you know how that's being done. But let me swing around here and show you the lumberyard area. Oh, while we're swinging, let me zoom in on this station, soldering station. So you can see it's a Schneider. I might have said Schaefer before. If I did, sorry about that. It's a Schneider, and it was I think it was like 49 bucks. So really inexpensive. And you can see here it's got it's got an on-off switch on the side, and it has a temperature control in the front. Goes from basically 0 up to about 900 degrees. Actually, it starts at 300 here and goes to 9. I've been using, I don't know, 715, 725, whatever that might be, but it seems to work really well. It's got a nice little rest for the soldering iron. Comes with a couple of different tips. Obviously the sponge here. So it's worked out really well for me. I can solder a joint in less than 15 seconds when I have the temperature right. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that. Let me swing around here. Sorry for the movement. So right here, and I will zoom back out again. I'll show you the plan. So right here is the end of the peninsula where we are, and this is a log pond here. So what I have done is I have cut the cork away from where my log pond is going to go. Sorry about the arm in the way. But this is basically where the log pond is going to go. And you can see here the log flume with this 1/4-inch cork sits perfectly on the bottom of what will be the bed of the lake, the log pond here. Obviously, I'll glue these together. The lumberyard, which you can see kind of off in the distance right over here, has a hole in the side right there, which connects to here. And so I'll get all that glued together and set in place. But so I'm going to be doing some resin pouring soon. When I say soon, before I die, I guess. But what I want to do is I want to get all the track laid first and wired up, and trains running, make sure everything's good to go, and then I'll work on this. But so to start with, obviously I'll paint the bottom of the log pond probably like a brown color, and then install the fascia, which I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm going to use 4-inch strips of masonite. I think 4-inch will be good enough here. It'll give me a good 2.5 inches of fascia below the side of the bench work here. and that is how I will, that's where I'll install the switches that I was talking about earlier for the yard. So back to this. I'll paint the bottom of this, I'll install the fascia, and then seal the edge, the whole way around, and then obviously pour the resin afterwards. But that's a long way down the road. Just wanted to show you, kind of where the log pond is going to go. What else? A couple of train show purchases that I made. I don't know if I can show you them because I think I put them away. But I did purchase about 7 sections of Code 83 track there. Got it for $1 a section, which was a steal. I got 7 sections. That's all the guy had in the bottom of a box of Code 100, which he thought that's all that was in there. So when you go to train shows, if you see stuff in a box, you got to dig. 2 other things I bought, actually 3 other things. One was, and it was a set of, oh gosh, memory's failing me today. Well, the other the other thing I can remember is a baggage car for my Amtrak passenger train. It was an Athearn, kind of the phase 1, I guess I would say, phase 1 Amtrak lettering. So I have that, and I got 2 other cars, which let's see if I can maybe dig for them. Actually, no. But anyway, what they were, now that my memory has returned, they're bulkhead flat cars, 50 footers, 60 footers, I guess. So I got those for the lumber facility over here, so I can, have some cars to load some lumber on. I do have, I think 4 center beam flat cars, but wanted something just a little bit different. So I'm beginning to ramble here, so I'm gonna stop recording and go back to maybe starting on the main line here. You can see right inside the level there's a track center line. That's the main line. So I think I'm gonna start laying that. It should go really quickly because it's just a bunch of straight track. The only turnouts are where the yard lead connects, which is somewhere by that tape measure back there towards the back of the table, and then again over here, not maybe a foot or 2 off the lift out. So I'm going to work on that, and I will be back to show you that. All right, so hopefully this isn't too shaky, but I just wanted to show you here about staggering these joints. This is the flexible side of the track, or the movable rail, I guess. And personal preference, I just put this on the outside all the time, so the movable rail is always out there. But there's a joint here, and then the joint for the other side of the track is down here. Sorry about that. So about, I don't know, 3 inches apart, and you can see that it holds the track pretty steady. No kinks. So what I do there, this joint here is the end of this flexible section to the left, and obviously the end of the flexible section to the right is here. I just take this movable rail and I slide it into the ties on this flexible section here. Just slide it into the where the spikes are, the molded on spikes. And I'm going to solder that right now, but I just wanted to show you how that works, and it does really well on the curves, preventing kinks. Alright guys, sorry to be off the tripod here, but just wanted to talk about modifications to plans as things go from paper to layout. So I'm on the back side of the layout. I call it the back side, where these two buildings go, 2 background buildings that fit up against the wall, and I'm laying out the main line, which is this one here, and then this is the siding. It's not attached yet, but it's going to be the siding that services these 2 industries. So down here in the corner, I don't know, either the last video or the one before, this curve that's in here really didn't have a defined radius. It was just like whatever fits the plan the best. So there's a curved turnout right there, which services a side track, which comes down here, and then it splits off again to two sidings that service a plastic pellet facility. So this is the area I'm working on. When I laid the plan out on the actual table here, this is the 24-inch radius curve, and I started it right here for the plan, and it runs around this way, and you can see where it ends right there. Well, the problem is that this is the main line, and this is where the main line needs to be. So, and I know that because I've extended the line here. You know, there's my main line coming down. So I have to adjust this radius back here to start it sooner so that it's going to end up in the right spot over here. So I don't have kind of an S curve, if you will, coming off of here and then, you know, down to the main line. I sure don't want that. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that, you know, plans sometimes change. So I've got the Trammel back out. I'm going to redraw that radius and, you know, have it hit in the right spot there. So second thing, I think I talked about having to do supports underneath certain areas of the layout. I'm definitely going to have to do that. The foam is not performing as I had hoped. But instead of pitching it all along with the cork and everything else, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put some supports up under the cork right underneath, under the foam, right where the track runs, so it's level, you know, from one area to the next. So I'll be doing that, I don't know, maybe sometime next week. But just wanted to show you here on the yard side, I've got all the yard tracks in. I have the yard lead in, and I have the main line in over there. And I have the engine servicing facility tracks in. Those are the two tracks right on either side of the set of pliers. And I started to come around to the left there with that 24-inch radius curve on the main line. So that's where I am right now. One thing that I am not happy with, but you know, it could have been worse, where the lift out goes here. This side is fine. I've cut the rails. You know, they're glued in place. Cars track over those fine with the lift out in here. On this side of the bridge lift out, you can see this here. The way I put this in is I had the lift out in place, glued the track right across the lift out, and then came back and cut it later. The problem was, because of this angle that this track is taking, when I cut this here, obviously I had to cut the ties as well so I could get the lift out to slide back and forth. There wasn't enough of a tie here right at the end to keep this rail in place, and it's got a bit of a spring in it. I don't know if you can tell it, but it's out enough that the cars derail when they're coming across there. So what I've done is I have one rail joiner right here, and when I put the lift out back in place, I'll slide that rail joiner in and it lines the rails up, and that works fine. So that's the only thing with the lift out that has not been a success. Again, I like to talk about my mistakes. I guess, you know, I don't know that there's really much to be done about that because of the way the room's configured, and, you know, where the turnouts have to come to, not turnouts, but the turns have to come in place on the top of the layout. So this is the only bad spot. If this curve was a little bit more square to the edge, it would have been fine, you know, like these over here. These are fine. And that one just had enough tie back here, these two ties, you know, enough to glue and hold in place. So I know that fellas will run a screw down underneath the rail and solder the rail to the screw. That would be a bit difficult for me to do at this point. Also, that would interfere with my sliding of my lift out in and out. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna say it could have been worse. I got one rail joiner that have to slide in place. Not that big a deal. But and again, sorry for not being on the tripod, but I ended up filming more than what I thought. So here are all the yard tracks. You can see they're in. Everything's glued down. I've run cars back through there. Track is great. No problems. And so I'm going to redraw that radius and continue to lay track. All right, guys. So this is this video has been recorded over quite a few days, and I have all of the track in. The main line is in. The yard is in. I don't know if you can see it back in the corner over there. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. That would be zooming out. There we go. Back along the wall where the silos are in that building. It doesn't go there. It's just sitting there for right now. Up the side where the background buildings go. That's all done. Let me move the camera in here a bit. And then finally over here, got the two side tracks going down there to the window. So on the last segment, I had noted about needing to put here on the lift out, and let me zoom out again. Let it come into focus there. This piece right here, I had talked about needing to have a rail joiner there in order to make the track smooth enough to transition across the gap. So last evening as I was finishing up, I had some pretty good crazy glue. It's called Extreme Power CA adhesive. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and put the lift out in, and I'll put the rail joiner across the gap and put some CA on that rail and see if I can get it to hold in place. Well, I got it to hold in place all right. So good that the rail joiner was glued to the rail, and I had to actually use my Dremel tool to cut the rail joiner in half so I could get the lift out. The end result, though, was that CA glued that rail in place. So I don't need the rail joiner any longer. So I guess that's a good thing. Anyway, let me pause here for a minute. We'll move the camera. All right, so there we are with the lift out in place, and it looks like a pretty big gap, but the cars roll over that just fine. So I had my granddaughter in here a couple of days ago running a box car the whole way around, and she was able to test all the joints for me, and everything's working out well. So coming down this table here, again, those side tracks are going off towards the window. Originally on the plan, if you remember what was back there, there was a tank car facility that was going to go back in that area. I have those two warehouses that I really like, and I'm thinking about putting them there instead of the tank car facility. So, I haven't decided for sure yet, but I think that's what I'm going to do. I don't have the tank car unloading facility built yet. There's three structures there that are part of that industry. And what I have discovered is that I have too much stuff. I have a lot of kits that I'm not going to be able to use that are still new, still sealed in the packaging. And I'll try and put a list of those together and put them in the comment section. And if along with pricing, and then depending upon where you are, if you'd like them, I'll send them to you. Obviously shipping will have to be paid as well, but anyway, I'll try and get that together. get that down in the comments. So let's go take a look at the area where the background buildings go. All right, so here we are, background building area. You can see the black line that I thought was where the track was going to go, but once I got the curved turnout in here, you can see it right there. And then coming back over to this area where the main line connects back up, I kind of had to just let the track take its own radius, if you will. Just kind of put everything down there and connected it, and then let the curve form. So then, you know, coming off the curved turnout, I had to account for enough gentle curve to be able to hit the two side tracks down here. Sorry about the camera noise there. But there is a plastic pellet facility that goes there. You can see it back in the corner. The silos sit alongside the track there. So over here where the Heritage Furniture and the commissary building go, I kind of mocked up where the Heritage Furniture has to extend out over the tracks there. So I've got that taken care of. It's in the right place now. And then today, what I was working on was getting the track in place in the lumber area. So you can see there's a lot of sidings and such that come in there. I've got the lumber buildings just kind of sitting around right now. They're not exactly where they need to go, but I just had them in place, you know, as I was running the track and, you know, starting to glue it down. So to stop from rambling on here, the track is all in place. It's not all quite glued down yet. I have to wait for some of the sections to dry before I can use the pins on other sections to hold the track in place. But I think for this video, that's going to do it. The next couple of sessions that I'm going to have is going to be related to adding the supports underneath the cork where the table is sagging a bit. So I'll have to be taking some measurements and cutting some wood strips and putting those in place. So I think that's probably going to be my next process here. I want to make sure everything's all level before, and you know, I've got all my supports in place before I start running wires. So anyway, appreciate everybody sticking with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk to you soon. Bye.